You are not unmagnetic because of others, but because you have not learned to govern your own mind. Every day you react before you examine your thoughts. You chase approval you cannot control, and you abandon reason the moment emotion rises. This is where your unrest begins, not in the world, but in your untrained judgment. What you call stress is often unexamined thinking, repeated without discipline. Before we go further, if you are ready to stop living as a reaction and start living as someone who leads their own mind with clarity, subscribe and stay here. This is not content for comfort. It is training for character. Watch closely now. What follows is not advice for admiration, but instruction for inner governance, where real freedom begins. Number 1. Master your reactions before seeking respect from anyone else. Listen carefully. Your life is being shaped by one thing you keep pretending is small. It is not small. It is the first movement of your mind when a person speaks to you with disrespect. It is the instant your chest tightens. It is the private story you begin to tell yourself when someone ignores you, delays you, corrects you, or fails to give you the approval you wanted. That instant reveals more about your character than your words ever will. A man may speak of honor and self-respect all day long, but if he loses himself the moment another person frowns at him, then he is not ruled by reason, he is ruled by appetite. He is ruled by the fear of being less in the eyes of others, and that is not strength. That is dependence dressed as dignity. You want to be magnetic. You want a presence that makes people feel steady in your company. You want to be the kind of person others notice without needing to demand notice. Then begin where all serious inner work begins. Master your reactions, not tomorrow, not after life becomes easier, not when people become kinder. Now, the first duty is not to be liked. The first duty is not to be admired. The first duty is to govern yourself. If your mind is noisy and careless, then your words will be noisy and careless. If your reactions are immediate and wild, then your character will be immediate and wild. If you cannot meet insult without losing your balance, then you have not yet become your own master. You are still being dragged by the leash of other people's moods. Understand this plainly. What another person says is not the wound. What they do is not the chain. The real event begins inside you when you agree that their action has power over your peace. They may speak harshly. They may misunderstand you. They may overlook your worth. None of this is in your command, but your judgment is in your command. Your choice is in your command. Whether you surrender your reason to the moment is in your command. This is the center of the matter. A free mind does not ask first what others have done. It asks what still belongs to me here. The answer is always the same. My judgment belongs to me. My response belongs to me. My character belongs to me. That is the territory no one can seize unless I hand it over. Most people spend their days trying to control what is not theirs. They try to control how they are seen. They try to control whether they are praised. They try to control whether others act fairly, speak politely, return messages, show gratitude, or recognize their value. And because they labor over what cannot be commanded, they live in constant irritation. They become weak in public and exhausted in private. Their peace rises and falls with every outside event. One kind word lifts them, one rude glance breaks them, one delay ruins them, one piece of criticism humiliates them. This is not a life, it is a weather-vane life. It turns wherever the wind blows, and a person who turns with every wind cannot call himself stable, no matter how loudly he speaks. So begin the discipline of separation. Before you react to anything, separate what is yours from what is not yours. Ask yourself in the middle of the moment, what part of this is under my control? Not the other person's tone, not their opinion, not their memory, not their mood, not their judgment. Those are outside your rule. What is inside your rule is your attention, your interpretation, your posture, your next action, your refusal to become a slave to insult, your willingness to stay clean inside while the outside remains messy. Train this question until it becomes natural. In the morning, before the day begins, prepare for what is likely to come. Remind yourself that you will meet impatient people, careless people, unfair people, and uncertain people. Remind yourself that none of them can force you to become careless, impatient, unfair, or uncertain. That power is reserved for you alone. If you remember this before the test comes, you are harder to shake when the test arrives. Do not expect the world to become gentle enough for your peace. The world has never promised that. Men and women will still be petty, they will still misunderstand, they will still speak before they think, they will still reward weakness in one moment and punish it in another. If you build your peace on their behavior, your peace will be as unstable as theirs. But if you build your peace on reason, it becomes yours. Reason does not ask whether life is fair before it tells you how to act. Reason asks what is right here and now. Reason says you may be treated unjustly, but you must not become unjust in return. Reason says you may be ignored, but you must not become foolish. Reason says you may be insulted, but you must not become ruled by insult. This is not passivity, this is command. There is a common weakness in human beings. When they are hurt, they want immediate relief. They want to answer quickly, they want to strike back. They want to explain themselves, defend themselves, prove themselves, win the moment, and leave no space for silence. But the first reaction is often the least wise reaction. It is the animal inside you reaching before the thinking part has spoken. And if you live by impulse, you will spend your life repairing what your impulse damaged. A ruined reputation often begins with one careless sentence. A broken relationship often begins with one needless reaction. A bitter heart often begins with one repeated surrender to offense. Do not let your life be built from reflex. Build it from choice. This is why you must practice the pause. When something stirs your blood, do not let the first movement of feeling become the first movement of action. Stop. Breathe. Wait for your judgment to stand upright. Even a short pause is enough to keep your reason alive. In that pause, ask whether your response will help virtue or feed pride. Ask whether your words will improve the situation or only protect your vanity. Ask whether your silence would be wiser than your speech. Ask whether the situation truly deserves your energy or whether your ego is simply hungry for attention. Many situations that seem urgent are not urgent at all. They are only emotionally loud. A disciplined mind does not mistake loudness for importance. If you learn to master your reactions, you begin to become the kind of person others can trust. Why? Because you are no longer predictable in the worst way. People know you will not explode at every slight. They know you will not collapse under pressure. They know you are not governed by the lowest part of yourself. That steadiness is rare. Most people are a storm waiting for a spark. You become magnetic when you cease to be a storm. Not because you charm everyone, not because you flatter everyone, not because you are easy to impress or easy to offend. You become magnetic because your presence carries order. It carries restraint. It carries the quiet power of someone who has begun to answer to reason instead of impulse. But hear this clearly, this power does not appear by wishing. It comes through repeated training. You do not become self-governing by understanding one noble idea. You become self-governing by practicing that idea under pressure. The practice is simple and hard. Each day, choose one moment to notice your first reaction without obeying it. Let the moment pass through you without becoming your master. When a person cuts you off in traffic, do not let anger take the wheel of your mind. When someone speaks carelessly, do not make your peace dependent on their manners. When a message goes unanswered, Do not turn uncertainty into a story of insult. When criticism arrives, do not defend your pride before examining whether there is truth in the words. The question is not whether the moment feels unfair. The question is whether you will remain just within it. You must also train yourself to endure small discomforts without complaint. This is not suffering for its own sake, it is preparation. If you collapse at the first inconvenience, then every minor hardship becomes a tyrant. But if you teach yourself to remain composed when things are uncomfortable, then larger trials cannot easily command you. Wake a little earlier than your softness prefers. Sit in silence when distraction calls. Finish the task before seeking relief. Leave behind the habit of needing everything to be easy before you can behave well. A soul that has learned to endure inconvenience without complaining becomes harder to bend when life becomes severe. Strength is never built in the moment of applause. It is built in the hidden hours when no one sees whether you are yielding or standing firm. Do not confuse emotional expression with honesty. Many people think they are being genuine because they immediately show whatever they feel. But a person who displays every feeling is not necessarily sincere. He may simply be undisciplined. True honesty is not the same as emotional spilling. True honesty is seeing your own state clearly and refusing to dress it up. It is saying, I am angry, but anger is not wisdom. I am hurt, but hurt is not a command. I feel slighted, but a slight is not an injury to my soul unless I allow it to be. This is honesty with discipline. This is self-knowledge without indulgence. To see yourself clearly and still choose the right action is a far higher form of truth than to act out every feeling and call it authenticity. A person who masters reaction begins to change his speech. And speech is never trivial. Words are actions of the mind made audible. Your tongue reveals whether reason is governing or merely watching from the corner. If your reactions are wild, then your speech will be wild. You will speak too much. You will explain too much. You will defend too much. You will try to force understanding from people who are not ready to give it. You will turn every disagreement into a contest. You will seek to win in conversation rather than to act rightly. But the disciplined person speaks only when speech serves virtue. He does not rush to fill silence. He does not speak to impress. He does not speak to punish. He speaks to make things clearer, kinder, truer, or more just. If speech cannot do that, it is better left unspoken. This restraint makes a person powerful in a way that vanity can never understand. People are drawn to those who are not desperate to be heard. They sense when a man has an inner standard that is not up for sale. They sense when his words are chosen rather than spilled. They sense when he can sit in silence without fear and answer without vanity. Such a person has no need to announce his strength. His restraint announces it for him. Yet remember that restraint is not coldness, it is precision. It is the decision to put each word in its proper place. A good word can heal. A careless word can poison. A disciplined man knows the difference. Now consider your motives. Why do you want respect? Why do you want to be seen as strong? Why do you want to be admired? If the answer is to feed your ego, then you are chasing a fragile prize. The admiration of others is not within your control and cannot make you good. A person may praise you and still not know your character. A person may ignore you and still be wrong about you. If you depend on others to validate your worth, then your worth is never securely yours. But if you build your worth on virtue, then no one can take it from you. You can be insulted and still be honorable. You can be misunderstood and still be just. You can be overlooked and still be worthy. This is the ground that does not shift. That is why the man who masters reaction is not arrogant. He does not need to dominate every room. He does not need to prove himself in every conversation. He does not turn every moment into a performance. He has learned that respect forced by fear is weak, and respect earned by steadiness is lasting. People trust the person who does not need to be the loudest voice in the room. They trust the person who can hear contradiction without becoming savage. They trust the person who can hold his ground without losing his humanity. That trust is part of what makes such a person magnetic. But do not seek the magnetism directly. Seek the discipline. The rest follows as a shadow follows the body. When emotion rises, ask what story you are telling yourself. Often the event itself is small. The inner story is what makes it large. Someone forgets your name, and you decide they disrespected your value. Someone gives sharp feedback, and you decide you are under attack. Someone chooses another person's company, and you decide you were rejected. But these are interpretations, not facts. The facts may be plain and limited. The mind, however, is a skilled liar when ego is in danger. It inflates, it assumes, it invents intent. It turns uncertainty into personal insult. This is where your duty begins. Question the story before you serve it as truth. Do not let the first interpretation become your judge. Examine it, cross-examine it, strip it of drama. A calm mind sees more accurately than an offended one. This is one of the most important habits you can build. Before you answer a hurt feeling, ask whether the feeling is reporting truth or merely demanding attention. Not every feeling is a lie, but not every feeling is fit to rule. Some feelings are signals, some are temptations, some are wounds. Some are just habits of thought that have grown strong through repetition. The wise person respects feeling enough to notice it and wise enough not to enthrone it. Let reason sit above the noise. Let judgment be slow and steady. Let your character be the judge, not your immediate mood. That one change can save years of unnecessary suffering. There will be days when you fail. You will react before you remember yourself. You will speak too sharply. You will let a small thing become a large one. You will feel ashamed afterward. Do not make that shame into another prison. Return to the work. The disciplined life is not built on never failing. It is built on returning quickly and honestly when you do fail. Examine the moment without excuse. What did you feel? What thought followed? What did you believe at the instant of reaction? What could you have said or done differently? Then leave judgment about the past and focus on training for the future. Self-condemnation is useless if it ends in paralysis. Self-examination is useful if it ends in better action. This evening review is essential. At the end of the day, ask yourself 3 questions. Where did I master myself today? Where did I lose myself today? What will I do differently tomorrow? Do this without performance, no excuses, no dramatic language, no false praise, just truth. You are not trying to shame yourself, you are trying to see yourself. A man who sees himself clearly can change. A man who flatters himself stays trapped. Each night becomes a courtroom for your own conduct, not to condemn you beyond hope, but to teach you how to live more wisely. The point is not guilt. The point is correction. Now think about the hidden root of your reactions. Often the deepest reason you react so strongly is because you have made your image too important. You are guarding a false self, a self built from how you think you should appear in the eyes of others. That false self is fragile. It cannot survive disagreement. It cannot survive rejection. It cannot survive being seen as ordinary. So it fights for every inch of pride. But the true self does not require all that defense. The true self is simply the part of you capable of reason and choice. That self does not need applause. It needs exercise. It does not need worship. It needs discipline. It does not need to win every exchange. It needs to remain just, calm and clear. Release the need to be treated as special. That demand weakens you. It makes you dependent on respect before you have earned it through conduct. A person who needs constant recognition becomes easy to manipulate. Praise him and he softens. Ignore him and he hardens. Challenge him and he loses control. But the person who seeks only to act rightly is not controlled by such things. He can accept praise without intoxication. He can accept criticism without collapse. He can accept silence without despair. This is freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you feel, the freedom to do what is right regardless of how you feel. To master reactions is to reclaim your future from the present moment's chaos. A single uncontrolled reaction can stain hours of work. A single sharp sentence can linger in memory for years. A single hasty decision can create chains you will carry far longer than the emotion that caused it. That is why the pause matters so much. That is why the separation of what is yours from what is not yours matters so much. That is why morning preparation matters so much. You are not training for easy moments. Easy moments teach very little. You are training for the moment when your pride is touched, when your patience is tested, when your body is tired, when your mind is crowded, when the old habit wants to rule again. That is the battlefield. That is where freedom is won. Do not expect this work to feel glamorous. It will often feel plain. You will be saying no to the impulse to speak. You will be swallowing the urge to prove yourself. You will be noticing your irritation and refusing to feed it. You will be correcting yourself in small moments no one else notices. That is good. Greatness of character is often invisible before it is ever admired. The things that make you truly magnetic are not theatrical. They are hidden habits. The way you answer when interrupted, the way you remain civil under pressure, the way you avoid gossip, the way you refuse to turn every feeling into a declaration, the way you keep your mind from being dragged by the crowd. These are not dramatic acts. They are the architecture of strength. If you want a practical exercise for today, begin with the first conversation that irritates you. Before you speak, take one breath longer than your habit would allow. In that breath, ask, what response would my best judgment choose? Then speak only if speech helps. If it does not help, remain still. Use this in small moments first. A short delay before answering. A calm look instead of a sharp remark. A neutral question instead of a defensive outburst. A refusal to interpret every silence as insult. A refusal to answer every slight as though your worth were hanging from it. Each such act is a stone laid in the foundation of freedom. Another practice: set one daily inconvenience for yourself on purpose. Do not obey every comfort. Do not let comfort become your ruler. Choose a harder seat for a while. Walk without distraction. Leave the phone aside for a period. End the shower before it feels luxurious. Eat a little less than your desire demands once in a while. Speak with measured restraint when you want to dominate the room. These acts are not punishments. They are reminders that you are not a servant of ease. A person who can endure small discomforts without complaint becomes less vulnerable to larger ones. He learns that discomfort is not a verdict. It is simply a condition to be met with character. When someone disrespects you, remember that their action reveals their character, not your value. Their words may show ignorance, their mood may show weakness, their impatience may show poor training. None of this requires your surrender. You do not improve your soul by copying their disorder. You improve it by refusing to join them. This is one of the highest forms of dignity. To remain clean inside when others are careless is not weakness. It is strength under control. It is the ability to stay governed by principle when the easier path is to descend into the same confusion as everyone else. And when you are praised, do not become soft. Praise is a pleasant temptation. It invites complacency. It can quietly return you to the need for approval. Be grateful if praise is deserved, but do not let it own you. Stay close to the work. Stay close to your standards. Stay close to the question of whether your conduct is truly noble or merely applauded. A person who is dependent on praise is as unstable as a person who is dependent on insults. One rises too high, the other falls too low. Both are captive to outside judgment. Freedom is found between them, in the discipline of not needing either to define you. Let your life become a practice of returning. Return to the present when the mind wanders into revenge or fantasy. Return to reason when emotion wants to commandeer the day. Return to duty when laziness asks for delay. Return to honesty when vanity tries to rewrite the story. Return to humility when pride starts speaking too loudly. Return to the simple question again and again, what is up to me now? Then do that thing well. This is enough. Not easy perhaps, but enough. You do not need 100 habits to begin this transformation. You need one clear commitment. I will not let my reactions rule me. I will not place my peace in the hands of other people. I will not confuse offense with injury. I will not obey my first impulse. I will not speak before reason. I will not make my life a theater for my ego. I will watch my thoughts. I will test my judgments. I will choose my response. I will meet the world as a rational being and not as a wounded child demanding comfort. Say this to yourself without theatrics. Say it as a man or woman who has grown tired of being dragged around by invisible chains. And when the day grows difficult, remember that difficulty is not your enemy. Untrained reaction is your enemy. The hard moment simply reveals where you still need work. That is a gift, though it rarely feels like one. Every irritation is a lesson if you are willing to learn. Every insult is a chance to practice restraint. Every disappointment is a chance to strengthen your judgment. Every delay is a chance to test whether your peace depends on speed. Every criticism is a chance to ask whether you have built your identity on substance or on image. Nothing is wasted if you use it rightly. A person who masters reactions becomes calm, not because life has become gentle, but because he has become inwardly ordered. That order is unmistakable. It changes the face. It changes the voice. It changes how one stands in a room. It changes how one listens. It changes how one speaks. It changes whether people feel they must brace themselves around you or can relax in your presence. This is the quiet magnetism of self-command. No noise, no performance, no need to dominate, just steadiness, just clarity, just the rare sight of a human being who is not at war with himself in public. Do the work while you have breath. Do not waste your days defending a false image or chasing a kind of respect that vanishes as quickly as it is given. Build something harder and better. Build a character that does not tremble when challenged. Build a mind that pauses before it reacts. Build a heart that accepts what cannot be changed and acts bravely where action is possible. Build a life in which your own judgment is enough to keep you upright. This is not a small thing. This is the whole thing. If you govern your reactions, then you begin to govern your life. And if you govern your life, then you are no longer at the mercy of every passing insult, every passing mood, every passing crowd. Start today, not with grand declarations, not with promises you will not keep. Start with the next moment, the next interruption, the next criticism, the next delay, the next irritation. Meet it with a steadier mind than the one you carried yesterday. Hold your tongue until reason speaks. Hold your peace until it becomes unshakable. Hold your standard even when the crowd drifts away. There is no nobler work. There is no shorter path. There is only the daily practice of becoming the ruler of your own mind. And that is where real strength begins. Number 2. Guard your thoughts, because character shapes lasting attraction naturally. Guard your thoughts and you guard your life. Let your thoughts wander without rule, and your character will be shaped by whatever enters first. A careless mind does not stay neutral. It becomes a maker of habits. It repeats impressions until they harden into beliefs. It turns passing assumptions into identity. It tells you stories about people before you have examined them. It tells you stories about yourself before you have tested them, and once a story becomes familiar, the mind begins to defend it as if it were truth. That is how a person becomes trapped while still believing he is free. Most suffering begins here, in the untrained mind that accepts every thought as if it were a fact. A thought arrives and you agree with it. A feeling rises and you obey it. A sharp memory appears and you relive it. A fear suggests itself and you build your day around it. You imagine a loss that has not happened and begin grieving before the event exists. You imagine rejection and begin shrinking before anyone has spoken. You imagine insult and begin preparing your defense before the room has given you any reason. This is not strength. This is surrender to the first draft of the mind. A disciplined life begins when you stop treating the first draft as final. You do not need every thought that crosses your mind. You are not required to keep every judgment. You are not required to believe every concern, every suspicion, every resentment, every fantasy, every complaint. The mind produces material constantly. That does not mean the material is worthy. Some thoughts are useful. Some are confused. Some are habits from old pain. Some are little acts of cowardice dressed as caution. Your duty is not to suppress the mind until it becomes silent. Your duty is to examine what it offers and accept only what is fit for reason. This is where character is built. Character is not a mask worn in public. It is the shape of the mind when no one is watching. It is the quality of the judgments you allow to live inside you. If your inner life is full of envy, then your speech will eventually reveal envy. If your inner life is full of complaint, then your conduct will eventually carry complaint. If your inner life is full of fear, then your decisions will quietly obey fear, even when your mouth says otherwise. A person cannot keep his thoughts corrupt and his character clean. The inner and outer life belong to one another. What you repeat inwardly becomes the sort of person you outwardly are. The reason this matters so much is simple. People are not drawn to constant performance. They are drawn to steadiness. They are drawn to the person whose mind is not in chaos. They are drawn to the person who does not overreact to every annoyance. They are drawn to the person who seems settled in himself because he has learned to govern his own judgments. There is a strength in such a person that does not need to shout. His presence reassures because he is not fighting himself in secret. He has a standard. He returns to it. He does not let every impression pull him away from it. That is what makes character enduring. That is what gives attraction its lasting form. It does not depend on novelty. It depends on order. Begin each day before the world has a chance to fill your mind with its noise. Sit still for a moment before the demands begin. Ask what may come today that could tempt you away from reason. A rude voice may come. A delay may come. A temptation to compare may come. A moment of loneliness may come. A chance to inflate your importance may come. A disappointment may come. None of these events needs to own you, but if you do not prepare, you will meet them as a person surprised by his own weakness. Morning discipline is not decoration, it is armor. It is a calm reminder that the day will test your judgments more than your schedule. It teaches you to meet the world awake, not merely occupied. Then practice the first great habit of the examined life. Examine each judgment before you accept it, not after you have acted on it, before. The moment a thought says this is unfair, pause and ask whether it is truly unfair or simply inconvenient. The moment a thought says they disrespected me, pause and ask whether this is fact or interpretation. The moment a thought says I cannot handle this, pause and ask whether the claim is true or whether it is fear speaking loudly. The moment a thought says I need their approval, pause and ask whether your life depends on what is in their hands. Thoughts do not deserve blind obedience. They deserve scrutiny. A free mind does not call every impulse wisdom. It puts every impulse on trial. This practice will reveal how often your distress is created by judgment rather than event. The event may be small. The judgment makes it enormous. Someone does not reply quickly, and the mind writes a story of rejection. Someone gives honest correction, and the mind writes a story of humiliation. Someone chooses another person's company, and the mind writes a story of being forgotten. But the facts are not the same as the story. The facts may be plain and limited. The story may be extravagant and false. If you live inside stories you never examined, you will spend your life suffering from inventions. There is a better way. Separate what belongs to you from what does not. Your judgments belong to you. Your desires belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your attention belongs to you. Other people's opinions do not belong to you. Their approval does not belong to you. Their mood does not belong to you. Their praise does not belong to you. Their disappointment does not belong to you. The weather of the outside world is not your property, but your response to it is. This distinction is not a theory, it is the beginning of peace. When you understand this, the mind stops begging reality to become easier and starts asking how to meet reality with virtue. Many people are miserable because they keep trying to live inside outcomes they cannot control. They want to control how they are seen. They want to control how others remember them. They want to control who chooses them, who praises them, who stays, who leaves, who notices, who values, who understands. But life refuses to submit to these wishes, so they fight reality. They compare, they resent, they complain. They imagine that their peace has been stolen when in truth they have handed it away. A person who places his well-being in external outcomes becomes a servant of chance. A person who places his well-being in disciplined judgment becomes difficult to disturb. This is why complaint weakens the mind. Complaint trains you to look outward for causes that are often found inward. It teaches you to narrate yourself as a victim of events instead of a chooser within events. That habit becomes poison. Every delay becomes disrespect. Every obstacle becomes proof of bad fortune. Every difficulty becomes a reason to stop examining yourself. But what if the obstacle was not an insult to your life, but a test of your ruling faculty? What if the delay was a chance to practice patience? What if the difficulty was a chance to discover whether you truly believe virtue matters more than comfort? Then the obstacle becomes useful. Then the test becomes training. Then the day is no longer a series of annoyances, but a field for inner work. Do not rush to label everything that troubles you as harm. Sometimes what troubles you is simply resistance against your own undisciplined preferences. A desire not fulfilled is not always injustice. A plan interrupted is not always disaster. A desire denied is not always loss. Often it is merely the mind discovering that reality will not serve appetite. In that moment, do not curse the world. Correct the judgment. Ask whether what you wanted was truly good or merely convenient. Ask whether you were seeking what is worthy or what is easy. Ask whether your reaction springs from principle or from vanity. This kind of questioning is not weakness. It is the beginning of wisdom. Train your attention as if your life depended on it, because in many ways it does. Whatever your attention rests upon will grow. If it rests on grievance, grievance grows. If it rests on vanity, vanity grows. If it rests on fear, fear grows. If it rests on duty, duty grows. If it rests on what is just and right, your character grows with it. The mind is not a field that stays empty. If you do not plant with intention, it will be seeded by whatever passes by. So choose what you feed, choose what you repeat, choose what you admit. Refuse the useless thoughts that return only to agitate you. Let them pass without becoming your companions. This is not a call to become cold. It is a call to become clear. A clear mind sees people more accurately. It is less greedy for praise and less cruel in disappointment. It does not demand that others complete it. It does not use affection as a bargaining tool. It does not build relationships around neediness or fear. It meets others from a place of inner order. That order makes kindness more stable because it is not driven by craving. It makes patience more genuine because it is not dependent on the mood of the day. It makes honesty safer because it is not trying to protect a fragile image. Character shaped by disciplined thought creates a presence that people can feel. They sense that they are with someone who has not abandoned himself. There will be moments when old habits rise up with great force. A memory will try to reopen an old wound. A comment will try to provoke an old anger. A loss will try to awaken an old panic. In those moments, do not say the thought is impossible or pretend the feeling is not there. Say instead that the impression has arrived and it must be judged. That single habit changes the whole structure of the mind. You are no longer the helpless recipient of whatever enters. You become the examiner. You become the one who decides whether the thought deserves a place in your soul. This is how freedom grows, not by refusing to feel, but by refusing to be ruled by the first feeling. If you want a practical exercise, begin with a written examination each evening. Write down the judgments that ruled you during the day. Which ones were useful? Which ones were false? Which ones fed irritation? Which ones fed fear? Which ones were driven by craving for approval? Which ones were justified by reason? Do not write to impress yourself. Write to expose yourself. The point is not to sound wise. The point is to become wiser. A few honest lines each day can do more for your life than many emotional speeches. You will begin to see patterns. You will notice the same weak thought returning in different clothing. You will notice the same complaint wearing different names. You will notice the same fear steering different decisions. Once you can see the pattern, you can begin to break it. Another exercise is to rehearse before the day begins the kinds of thoughts that usually disturb you. If you know criticism affects you, prepare to meet criticism without defensiveness. If you know uncertainty disturbs you, prepare to meet uncertainty without panic. If you know comparison weakens you, prepare to refuse it the moment it appears. This is not imagination for entertainment. This is moral training. You are not trying to predict the future. You are training the mind not to collapse when the future arrives in an unwanted shape. The person who has practiced in thought becomes harder to surprise in life. The deepest guard you can place over your thoughts is the reminder that a good life is not made from getting everything you want. It is made from wanting what is good and acting accordingly. That is the standard. That is the measure. Not the attention you receive, not the comfort you keep, not the applause you gather, not the number of people who think well of you. A noble character does not depend on popular opinion. It depends on the daily choice to think well, judge well, and act well. When that becomes your standard, attraction becomes a consequence instead of an obsession. You stop chasing it. You begin to radiate steadiness because your mind is no longer pulling itself apart. And if you fail, do not build a second failure by turning the failure into identity. A bad thought is not your essence. A mistaken judgment is not your soul. An unguarded reaction is not your final form. It is a moment that reveals work still to be done. Accept the lesson. Correct the mind. Return to reason. That return is the path. Every time you come back, you become a little more your own. Every time you refuse the false thought, you strengthen the true self. Every time you choose judgment over impulse, you move farther from slavery and closer to freedom. This is the quiet labor that changes a life. It does not ask for applause. It asks for attention. It does not ask for perfection in a day. It asks for vigilance across many days. Guard your thoughts and you guard your character. Guard your character and your presence becomes reliable. Guard your presence and the people around you feel it, not because you are trying to impress them, but because you are no longer leaking confusion everywhere you go. Your words become cleaner, your actions become steadier, your relationships become less burdened by need and more rooted in truth. This is the natural attraction of a disciplined inner life. So today, do not wait for a better mood. Do not wait for the world to become gentler. Do not wait for your desires to become quiet on their own. Begin now. Observe the next thought. Question it. Separate it from fact if it is false. Accept it if it is true and useful. Reject it if it is vanity dressed as wisdom. Return again and again to what is in your power. Return again and again to reason. Return again and again to the rule that only virtue can make a life good. If you do this faithfully, your mind will become less a battlefield and more a home. And when the inner house is in order, your character no longer needs to beg for admiration. It stands, and that is enough. Number 3. Accept every hardship without complaint and strengthen quiet confidence daily. Every hardship that enters your life asks the same silent question. Will you add resistance to the burden, or will you carry only what reality has placed before you? Most people believe they are crushed by events. Look more carefully. They are often crushed by the story they tell themselves about those events. A setback arrives, and they immediately call it unfair. A loss appears, and they decide their future has been stolen. A delay interrupts their plans, and they conclude that life has turned against them. Before the hardship has completed its work, the mind has already multiplied it with judgment. This second burden is one you create yourself. The first burden belongs to circumstance. The second belongs to your own thinking. You cannot become inwardly strong while demanding that life remove every difficulty before you agree to remain peaceful. That agreement will never be honored because the world has never promised a life free from hardship. There will always be illness, disappointment, misunderstanding, fatigue, failure, uncertainty, and change. These conditions are woven into human existence. To resent them is to resent reality itself. The disciplined mind does not ask why hardship exists. It asks how to meet hardship without surrendering virtue. That single change in direction transforms suffering into training. Complaint appears harmless because it often arrives disguised as honesty. You tell yourself that you are simply describing what happened, but examine your words carefully. How often are you describing the event, and how often are you strengthening your resentment toward it? Every repeated complaint teaches the mind that peace depends upon favorable circumstances. Every repeated complaint convinces you that your well-being has been handed over to events beyond your command. The habit grows quietly until you no longer notice it. Then every inconvenience becomes an invitation to bitterness. This is not the work of hardship. It is the work of an undisciplined judgment. Refuse to believe that complaint relieves suffering. It rarely does. More often, it extends suffering by returning the mind again and again to what cannot now be altered. A difficult conversation ends, yet you continue arguing with it in memory. An opportunity passes, yet you continue rehearsing the life that might have been. A mistake is made, yet you repeat the same accusation against yourself until regret becomes your constant companion. None of these habits repairs the event. They simply consume the present with endless resistance toward the past. The first discipline each morning is not to wish for an easier day. Wish instead for a steadier mind. Before your duties begin, remind yourself that something unexpected will probably interrupt your plans. Someone may misunderstand your intentions. Your body may become tired before your work is complete. Circumstances may refuse to obey your preferences. None of these possibilities should surprise you because they belong to the nature of life. When difficulty finally arrives, you will recognize it not as an enemy entering forbidden ground, but as a visitor you already expected. Preparation softens surprise, and surprise often gives unnecessary power to hardship. When the first obstacle appears, resist the urge to judge it immediately. The mind loves quick conclusions because certainty feels comfortable. Yet comfort is not the standard by which truth is measured. Ask yourself instead what actually stands before you. Separate the event from your interpretation. Losing money is an event. Declaring your entire future ruined is an interpretation. Being corrected is an event. Deciding you have no worth is an interpretation. Waiting longer than expected is an event. Believing the day has been destroyed is an interpretation. Between the event and your conclusion stands your freedom to judge carefully. Use it. There is great dignity in learning to endure discomfort without making it the center of your identity. A difficult season does not require you to introduce yourself as a victim. A painful experience does not require you to abandon your principles. Hardship can occupy your circumstances without occupying your character. This distinction is one of the greatest protections available to the human mind. Your surroundings may become uncertain while your inner direction remains firm. Your plans may collapse while your commitment to justice, honesty, courage, and moderation remains untouched. The person who understands this cannot easily be conquered because the essential part of life has not been placed where fortune may seize it. Quiet confidence grows differently from ordinary confidence. Ordinary confidence depends upon repeated success. It expands when praised and contracts when criticized. It becomes bold during comfort and uncertain during adversity. Quiet confidence follows another path. It is built every time you choose what is right while no reward is guaranteed. It grows each time you remain faithful to reason, although emotion argues for surrender. It deepens whenever you refuse to exchange your principles for temporary relief. Such confidence cannot be borrowed from applause because it was never built upon applause. Notice how often fear persuades you to abandon your own standards. You become impatient because the situation is difficult. You exaggerate because telling the complete truth feels costly. You avoid responsibility because failure seems embarrassing. In every case, hardship is not forcing your conduct. Hardship is merely revealing where your discipline remains incomplete. This realization should encourage rather than discourage you. A weakness exposed honestly becomes a place where training may begin. A weakness denied becomes a permanent ruler of your life. Train yourself to welcome honest examination after every demanding experience. Do not ask only whether the outcome pleased you. Ask whether your conduct remained worthy throughout the process. Did you protect your integrity when pressure increased? Did you preserve fairness while others acted unfairly? Did you remain truthful when deception promised an easier path? These questions matter because character is measured by conduct, not convenience. A fortunate outcome achieved through poor judgment is no victory. A difficult outcome met with virtue is never defeat. Each evening, revisit the hardest moment of your day without self-pity or self-congratulation. Observe yourself with calm precision. Where did irritation begin? Which expectation created frustration? Which desire refused to accept reality? Which judgment enlarged the burden? This practice is not designed to accuse you. It exists to remove blindness. The person unwilling to examine himself must continue repeating the same mistakes because he never discovers their source. Honest review is the beginning of deliberate correction. Do not imagine that strength arrives through extraordinary moments alone. Character is shaped most reliably through ordinary inconveniences accepted without resentment. Stand patiently in the longer line without feeding annoyance. Complete the necessary task even after enthusiasm disappears. Accept the delayed reward without demanding immediate satisfaction. Listen carefully when another person speaks instead of preparing your defense while they are still talking. These simple acts seem insignificant, yet they steadily educate the soul. They teach the mind that it is capable of obeying reason instead of impulse. Many people secretly negotiate with reality. They agree to remain disciplined only if life becomes pleasant. They promise patience only while circumstances cooperate. They offer kindness only when others deserve it. Such conditions guarantee instability because external conditions never remain constant. Let your discipline rest upon something more reliable. Let it rest upon your own commitment to virtue. Then your conduct no longer changes whenever fortune changes direction. There will be seasons when your efforts appear unnoticed. You may fulfill your duties faithfully while receiving little recognition. You may improve your character while outward success remains distant. During such periods, guard yourself against discouragement. You are not practicing discipline to impress spectators. You are shaping the only possession that remains truly yours. Every act of integrity strengthens the person performing it, regardless of who observes it. The value of right action does not depend upon witnesses. Another useful exercise is to reduce unnecessary dependence upon comfort. Occasionally choose the more demanding path when both choices remain honorable. Walk instead of seeking constant convenience. Complete important work before seeking entertainment. Spend time in silence rather than filling every empty moment with distraction. These voluntary disciplines remind the mind that happiness does not require continual ease. They prepare you to remain composed when involuntary hardship eventually arrives. A person accustomed only to comfort becomes frightened by ordinary discomfort. A person who has practiced moderation meets discomfort with familiarity instead of panic. Beware of measuring your progress by emotion alone. There will be days when discipline feels natural and days when every worthy action requires effort. Do not mistake difficulty for failure. Sometimes the greatest growth occurs precisely because virtue demanded effort. A calm sea does not reveal the strength of a skilled sailor. Likewise, an easy day reveals little about your character. Pressure exposes what comfort conceals. Therefore, do not resent demanding seasons. They allow you to discover whether your principles are genuine or merely convenient. Remember also that hardship affects every human being without exception. The difference lies not in who suffers, but in how each person chooses to understand suffering. One person becomes resentful and blames the world for every disappointment. Another accepts that difficulty belongs to life and turns attention toward honorable action. Both experience the same event. Their judgments create entirely different lives. Your freedom always begins with the judgment you choose. Guard yourself against comparing your burdens with those of others. Comparison distracts the mind from its proper responsibility. Whether another person carries more or less difficulty changes nothing about your own duty. Your responsibility remains exactly the same. Meet today's circumstances with wisdom. Fulfill today's obligations with justice. Endure today's discomfort with courage. Practice moderation in today's desires. The soul becomes scattered whenever it abandons present duty for unnecessary comparison. When discouragement whispers that your efforts make little difference, answer it with action rather than argument. Complete the next worthy task. Speak the next truthful sentence. Correct the next careless judgment. Offer the next fair response. The disciplined life advances through repeated honorable choices, not through dramatic declarations. Every well-governed decision strengthens the habit of self-command. Never confuse acceptance with surrender. Acceptance recognizes reality exactly as it stands. Surrender abandons responsibility. Acceptance says this difficulty exists and must be met wisely. Surrender says this difficulty excuses poor conduct. One preserves freedom while the other abandons it. You remain responsible for your judgments, regardless of circumstances. That responsibility cannot be transferred to fortune, society, luck, or other people. It belongs entirely to you. There will come moments when your patience feels exhausted. During those moments, narrow your attention. Do not carry tomorrow's uncertainty together with today's challenge. Fulfill only the duty directly before you. Speak well in this conversation. Act honestly in this decision. Endure this discomfort without complaint. Return repeatedly to the present obligation. The mind often creates despair by attempting to carry many imagined burdens at once. Reason carries only what belongs to the present moment. Quiet confidence eventually becomes visible without ever seeking attention. Others notice steadiness before they notice talent. They trust consistency before they admire achievement. They recognize a person who remains composed under pressure because such conduct has become increasingly uncommon. Yet never make their admiration your objective. If confidence depends upon being noticed, it has already become fragile. Let your aim remain the cultivation of virtue. Whatever respect follows belongs to fortune rather than ambition. When the day closes, do not ask whether life treated you kindly. Ask whether you treated life honorably. Did you preserve your principles when tested? Did you govern your judgments instead of allowing them to govern you? Did you refuse needless complaint even when circumstances became uncomfortable? Did you strengthen your soul through faithful practice rather than weaken it through excuses? These questions gradually reshape a human life because they direct attention toward the only field where genuine freedom exists. Accept every hardship without complaint, not because hardship is pleasant, but because resistance without reason serves no purpose. Strengthen quiet confidence daily, not through grand displays of endurance, but through countless unseen choices governed by wisdom. Let every obstacle become another opportunity to practice justice. Let every disappointment become another opportunity to practice moderation. Let every uncertainty become another opportunity to practice courage. Build your life upon these disciplines day after day until your peace no longer depends upon comfort, but upon the condition of your own character. Then hardship may visit your circumstances, yet it will no longer command your soul. Number 4. Discipline your speech until every word serves truth and reason. Your words reveal the condition of your ruling mind long before your actions become visible. Every sentence you speak carries the mark of the judgments you have accepted, the desires you have entertained, and the discipline you have either cultivated or neglected. Many people believe speech is merely a way to express themselves. It is more than that. Speech is the outward movement of the inner life. Before a careless word leaves your mouth, it has already been formed by an undisciplined thought. Before a truthful word strengthens another person, it has already been strengthened by a mind committed to reason. If you wish to improve your character, do not begin by polishing your language. Begin by governing the judgments from which your language arises. Observe how quickly people surrender their reason once conversation begins. A disagreement appears, and they stop listening. A criticism reaches their ears, and they prepare a defense before understanding what has been said. A rumor spreads, and they repeat it before asking whether it deserves to exist another moment. Praise arrives, and they begin speaking more to protect their image than to pursue truth. Their speech is no longer guided by wisdom. It has become a servant of pride, fear, impatience, or vanity. Every unnecessary word strengthens the habit that produced it. The tongue rarely creates disorder on its own. Disorder begins much earlier. It begins when the mind refuses to examine its first impressions. A thought appears, and instead of questioning it, you announce it. An emotion rises, and instead of understanding it, you defend it. A suspicion forms, and instead of testing it against reality, you speak as though certainty has already been earned. This is how misunderstanding grows. This is how trust is slowly damaged. This is how a person loses command over relationships while believing the problem lies only with others. Do not imagine that speaking quickly proves confidence. More often it reveals impatience. A mind trained by reason does not fear silence because silence gives judgment room to mature. There are moments when remaining quiet is the highest expression of discipline. Silence prevents anger from becoming accusation. Silence prevents assumption from becoming false witness. Silence prevents wounded pride from disguising itself as honesty. Every time you refuse to let an unexamined thought become spoken fact, you strengthen your character more than you realize. Begin each morning with a simple commitment before your first conversation. Tell yourself that your words today will not serve your impulses. They will serve truth. They will serve justice. They will serve self-command. Throughout the day, you will encounter opportunities to exaggerate, interrupt, defend yourself unnecessarily, seek approval through excessive talking, or diminish another person to elevate yourself. Prepare for these moments before they arrive. The mind that expects temptation recognizes it more easily when it appears. Ask yourself before every important conversation what truly belongs to your control. You do not control whether another person agrees with you. You do not control whether your advice is accepted. You do not control how your intentions are interpreted. Those matters belong to another mind. What belongs to you is different. You govern whether your words remain truthful. You govern whether your tone reflects respect. You govern whether your purpose is honorable. Once you understand this distinction, your conversations become less anxious because you stop demanding ownership over outcomes that were never yours. One of the greatest enemies of disciplined speech is the desire to protect the image you have created of yourself. Notice how often unnecessary words are spoken simply because silence feels threatening to pride. Someone questions your decision, and you begin explaining far beyond what wisdom requires. Someone misunderstands your motives, and you spend endless energy trying to control their opinion. Someone succeeds where you hoped to succeed, and subtle comparisons begin shaping your language. Pride always demands another sentence. Reason often requires fewer. Train yourself to distinguish between speaking for clarity and speaking for victory. These two purposes rarely travel together. When your aim becomes victory, you begin selecting words that strengthen your position rather than illuminate reality. You interrupt because understanding feels slower than winning. You dismiss because patience appears inconvenient. You become attached to being right instead of becoming attached to discovering what is right. The disciplined mind chooses truth even when truth requires correction. There is no shame in discovering that your first conclusion was incomplete. The greater shame lies in defending falsehood simply because your ego fears retreat. Guard yourself carefully against gossip. Gossip appears harmless because it often disguises itself as ordinary conversation. Yet examine what happens beneath the surface. You discuss another person's faults while neglecting your own. You strengthen curiosity about matters outside your responsibility while weakening attention toward your own character. You become accustomed to evaluating lives you cannot govern instead of correcting the one life entrusted to your care. Every unnecessary discussion about another person's shortcomings is time removed from your own improvement. Likewise, avoid speaking from resentment. Words born from bitterness rarely accomplish justice. They seek relief rather than wisdom. You may feel temporary satisfaction after expressing anger without restraint, but satisfaction is not the measure of virtue. Ask instead whether your speech improved your character. Did it increase fairness? Did it encourage understanding? Did it preserve integrity? If not, then your words have carried you farther from the life you claim to desire. There is another danger that receives less attention. Many people speak carelessly about themselves. They repeat that they are incapable. They repeat that they always fail. They repeat that they cannot change. Eventually, these statements become accepted judgments rather than passing emotions. The mind begins arranging choices around them. Be careful what authority you grant your own language. Honest self-examination requires accuracy, not self-condemnation. Admit mistakes plainly, but never transform temporary weakness into permanent identity. You are responsible for correcting your judgments, not for imprisoning yourself inside them. Whenever emotion rises strongly, delay important speech until reason has returned to its proper place. This delay is not avoidance, it is discipline. Anger shortens perspective, fear magnifies uncertainty, excitement exaggerates confidence, discouragement darkens possibility. None of these conditions provide a stable foundation for wise communication. Allow the mind to regain balance before asking the tongue to perform its duty. A delayed, truthful answer serves justice better than an immediate, reckless response. Another practice worthy of daily attention is learning to ask questions before offering conclusions. Questions create space for understanding. Conclusions delivered too early often create unnecessary conflict. If another person's behavior troubles you, ask before assuming. If instructions appear unclear, ask before criticizing. If disagreement emerges, ask what the other person actually means rather than arguing against what you imagined they intended. Many conflicts survive only because careful questions were replaced by confident assumptions. Examine also your desire to fill every silence. Many people fear quiet because they mistake constant conversation for connection. Yet silence often protects dignity where unnecessary speech would diminish it. A disciplined person does not measure value by the number of words spoken. He measures value by whether each word contributes something worthy. Conversation should never become an escape from self-examination. Sometimes the most important work happens when no one is speaking at all. Each evening, review not only what you accomplished, but also how you communicated. Which conversations reflected patience? Which words carried vanity? Where did you interrupt unnecessarily? Where did you exaggerate? Where did you speak only to receive approval? Where did you remain silent when justice required honest speech? This examination should remain calm and exact. Do not excuse yourself because others behaved poorly. Their conduct belongs to them. Your speech belongs to you. The purpose of review is correction, not self-punishment. Notice how disciplined speech changes your relationships without demanding control over other people. Trust grows because your words become dependable. Others no longer wonder whether you are speaking from impulse or from thoughtful judgment. Your promises become more meaningful because you make fewer of them. Your criticism becomes more valuable because it is offered fairly rather than emotionally. Your encouragement carries greater weight because it is sincere rather than flattering. Character quietly enters every conversation before your opinions ever do. Be cautious with humor as well. Laughter has its proper place, but never allow amusement to become permission for injustice. Mockery easily disguises cruelty. Sarcasm easily disguises resentment. A careless joke may entertain the crowd while weakening your own integrity. Before speaking, ask whether your words preserve respect for yourself and for others. If amusement requires abandoning fairness, the price is too high. There will be moments when truth itself becomes difficult to speak. Perhaps honesty threatens your comfort. Perhaps admitting error wounds your pride. Perhaps acknowledging ignorance feels embarrassing. These are precisely the moments where speech becomes moral training. Truth offered with respect strengthens the soul, even when it brings temporary discomfort. Falsehood spoken for convenience weakens the soul, even when it appears successful. Do not evaluate speech by immediate advantage. Evaluate it by the condition in which it leaves your character. Remember that listening is also part of disciplined speech. A person who cannot listen carefully cannot speak wisely because understanding always precedes worthy judgment. Listen without preparing your reply. Listen without searching for opportunities to display your knowledge. Listen without secretly hoping the other person fails so your argument appears stronger. Careful listening is an act of justice because it grants another person the fairness you hope to receive yourself. As you practice these disciplines, you will notice an unexpected change. Your conversations become simpler. You feel less pressure to impress. You no longer chase every disagreement. You no longer explain yourself to every passing opinion. The desire to control how others perceive you gradually weakens because your attention returns to the only responsibility that truly belongs to you, whether your words remain faithful to reason, whether they remain faithful to truth, whether they remain faithful to virtue. Do not expect perfection after a single day of practice. Years of careless speech cannot be replaced by one moment of awareness, yet every conversation offers another opportunity to strengthen discipline. Every pause before speaking strengthens self-command. Every truthful sentence strengthens integrity. Every refusal to repeat gossip strengthens justice. Every patient answer strengthens moderation. These small victories accumulate until your speech reflects a mind that has learned to govern itself instead of being governed by circumstance. If you fail during the day, correct yourself immediately rather than defending the mistake. A sincere acknowledgement requires fewer words than prolonged justification. Admit what was inaccurate. Withdraw what was unfair. Learn what allowed the error to arise. Then continue practicing without becoming discouraged. Honest correction is itself an act of virtue because it places truth above personal pride. Over time, your words will require less effort because they will emerge from a mind that has become increasingly ordered. Speech no longer serves emotion seeking release. It serves reason seeking what is right. You will discover that fewer words often carry greater force than endless explanation. Calm conviction persuades more deeply than loud insistence. Quiet honesty leaves a stronger impression than polished performance. Discipline your speech until every word serves truth and reason, because speech is never separate from character. Each sentence either strengthens the habits that govern your soul or weakens them. Each conversation becomes another opportunity to practice wisdom instead of impulse, justice instead of vanity, moderation instead of excess, courage instead of avoidance. When your words consistently reflect these principles, you no longer need elaborate displays to earn respect. Your speech itself becomes evidence of a disciplined inner life, and every conversation becomes another step toward the freedom that only self-governance can provide. Number 5. Examine your motives before expecting admiration from other people. Before you seek admiration from another person, stop and ask a question that few people have the courage to face. Why do you want to be admired at all? Do not answer too quickly. The first answer is often the one given by pride. Stay with the question until every excuse grows quiet. You may discover that much of what you call ambition is simply a longing to be validated. Much of what you call confidence is only a fear of being overlooked. Much of what you call success is an attempt to silence an insecurity that has never been honestly examined. Until your motives become clear to you, they will continue governing your life from the shadows. The greatest danger is not that other people misunderstand you. The greatest danger is that you never understand yourself. A person can spend years building a reputation while remaining a stranger to his own intentions. He works tirelessly, speaks persuasively, and appears disciplined, yet every effort is secretly directed toward winning approval. His actions may look noble from the outside, but inwardly they are dependent upon the opinions of others. Such a life appears strong while remaining fragile because it stands upon a foundation that does not belong to him. There is nothing stable about placing your peace inside another person's judgment. Their opinion changes with circumstance. Their attention moves from one subject to another. Their praise rises and disappears as quickly as the events that produced it. If your contentment depends upon their approval, then your emotional life becomes a servant of forces you cannot command. You will celebrate when admired and become discouraged when ignored. You will begin adjusting your conduct not according to reason but according to applause. At that moment, your character no longer directs your life. public opinion does. The disciplined mind refuses to make such an exchange. It understands that another person's admiration is never entirely within its control. You may act honorably and still be misunderstood. You may speak truthfully and still be criticized. You may fulfill every duty faithfully and still remain unnoticed. None of these outcomes determine the quality of your character. They reveal only that external judgment belongs to the world outside your governance. Your responsibility ends with your own conduct. Beyond that point, you enter territory that was never yours to possess. Every morning, begin with an examination of purpose before beginning the examination of tasks. Ask yourself why you intend to perform today's work. Are you pursuing excellence because excellence is worthy, or because you hope others will notice? Are you speaking kindly because justice requires kindness, or because kindness improves your image? Are you working diligently because diligence reflects virtue, or because you fear appearing ordinary? These questions may seem uncomfortable, yet discomfort is often the price of honesty. Better to discover impure motives early than to spend years strengthening them without awareness. Do not fear finding selfish motives within yourself. Fear refusing to acknowledge them. Every human mind contains desires that seek admiration more than virtue. The difference between the disciplined and the careless person is not the absence of temptation. It is the willingness to examine temptation before allowing it to shape action. Once a hidden motive becomes visible, it loses much of its power. What remains is your opportunity to choose differently. Notice how often disappointment follows expectations that were never reasonable. You help another person and secretly expect gratitude. You perform your responsibilities and quietly expect recognition. You offer advice and assume it will be appreciated. When these expectations remain unfulfilled, resentment begins growing where generosity once existed. The problem did not begin with another person's response. It began with an attachment to an outcome beyond your authority. You performed an action that belonged to you, then demanded ownership over another person's reaction, which never belonged to you in the first place. This is why the separation between what is yours and what is not must become a daily habit, rather than an occasional thought. Your intentions belong to you. Your effort belongs to you. Your integrity belongs to you. Another person's admiration does not. Their approval does not. Their memory of your actions does not. Once this distinction becomes clear, much unnecessary suffering disappears. You stop bargaining with reality. You stop expecting payment from circumstances that never promised rewards. You begin finding satisfaction in acting well rather than being noticed. Many people spend more energy managing appearances than strengthening character. They carefully choose words that make them appear wise while neglecting wisdom itself. They cultivate an image of patience while privately nourishing resentment. They seek opportunities to display generosity while secretly counting how often others acknowledge it. Such effort produces constant exhaustion because maintaining appearances requires continual attention. Character requires something different. It asks only that your inner life agree with your outward conduct. This agreement creates peace because no performance must be protected. One useful discipline is to perform worthy actions that no one else will ever know about. Complete a responsibility without announcing it. Offer assistance without expecting acknowledgement. Correct a mistake without seeking praise for your honesty. Let these actions remain unseen. At first your pride may resist. It will ask why effort should remain invisible. Listen carefully to that resistance because it reveals precisely where attachment to admiration still survives. Continue the practice until goodness itself becomes sufficient reward. When criticism arrives, examine your response with the same honesty you apply to praise. If criticism immediately wounds your identity, perhaps your identity has been resting upon admiration instead of virtue. If praise immediately excites your vanity, Perhaps your sense of worth has become dependent upon external voices. Neither reaction deserves blind acceptance. Pause before agreeing with either one. Ask whether the judgment concerns your character truthfully or merely reflects another person's perspective. Accept correction when it reveals genuine faults. Release opinions that neither improve your conduct nor strengthen your understanding. The goal is never to collect approval or reject every criticism. The goal is to remain faithful to reason regardless of both. Beware of comparing your life with the lives of others. Comparison quietly feeds the hunger for admiration because it teaches the mind to measure value through public recognition. You begin counting achievements instead of examining principles. You begin chasing visibility instead of integrity. Another person's success becomes evidence of your imagined failure. Yet comparison cannot produce wisdom because it directs attention away from your own responsibilities. The disciplined mind returns repeatedly to the same question: am I governing my own character according to reason today? Everything beyond that question belongs elsewhere. Your motives become visible through the moments when no audience exists. Observe how you behave when no recognition is possible. Do you remain honest when dishonesty would remain undiscovered? Do you complete your work carefully when no praise will follow? Do you preserve fairness when no reputation can be gained from it? These moments reveal the true direction of the soul. Virtue practiced only before spectators is not yet secure. Virtue practiced in solitude becomes part of who you are. Throughout the day, examine not only what you are doing, but also the desire driving the action. Before speaking, ask whether your words seek understanding or admiration. Before making a decision, ask whether you are choosing what is right or what appears impressive. Before accepting a commitment, ask whether duty calls you or vanity attracts you. This habit gradually exposes the hidden motives that often disguise themselves as noble intentions. Once exposed, they may be corrected through deliberate choice. There will be times when you receive no acknowledgement for genuine effort. During those moments, resist the temptation to conclude that your work lacks value. Worthy action never depends upon public recognition for its worth. Justice remains just, even when unnoticed. Honesty remains honorable even when ignored. Self-restraint remains valuable even when no one applauds it. If virtue required witnesses before possessing value, then it would no longer be virtue. It would become performance. At the end of each day, conduct a careful review of your motives. Do not ask merely whether your tasks were completed. Ask why you pursued them. Which actions sprang from duty? Which were influenced by pride? Which conversations were shaped by a desire to appear intelligent? Which moments revealed insecurity seeking approval? Which decisions reflected genuine commitment to what is right? Honest answers become the beginning of inner freedom because they remove the disguises under which unhealthy desires prefer to remain hidden. One of the greatest obstacles to self-examination is the habit of excusing yourself while judging others strictly. You easily recognize vanity in another person's behavior, yet overlook it within your own. You criticize another person's desire for recognition while secretly pursuing the same reward through different methods. Turn this attention inward. The purpose of philosophy is not to expose another person's character, but to refine your own. Every moment spent condemning another person's motives is a moment removed from improving yours. Remember also that admiration cannot make you better. It can encourage, but it cannot transform. Transformation belongs to disciplined choices repeated over time. A crowd may praise a person whose character remains weak. A crowd may ignore a person whose character remains excellent. Public opinion has never been a reliable measure of moral worth. Therefore, do not borrow your standards from popularity. Borrow them from reason. Let every decision be measured by whether it strengthens justice, courage, moderation, and wisdom within you. If success arrives, receive it with gratitude but not dependence. If recognition comes, accept it without allowing it to define your value. If opportunities increase, continue examining your motives with even greater care. Prosperity often reveals hidden weaknesses that hardship could not expose. Pride grows most comfortably in favorable conditions. Continue asking yourself whether your actions remain directed toward virtue or whether admiration has quietly become your new master. Likewise, if obscurity remains your companion, do not mistake obscurity for failure. A quiet life governed by integrity possesses greater dignity than a celebrated life governed by vanity. The world often rewards appearance more quickly than substance, but the condition of your soul is not determined by the world's timing. It is determined by the judgments you choose and the principles you refuse to abandon. Practice gratitude without making it another performance. Be thankful for opportunities to improve rather than opportunities to impress. Be thankful for correction that reveals hidden faults rather than praise that leaves them untouched. Be thankful for responsibilities that strengthen discipline rather than admiration that weakens vigilance. Gratitude directed toward virtue steadies the mind because it appreciates what truly contributes to a good life. As this practice deepens, you will notice a quiet transformation. The need to explain yourself begins fading. The urge to display your achievements weakens. Conversations become more sincere because they no longer exist to protect an image. Decisions become simpler because they are measured against principles rather than popularity. Relationships become healthier because you stop demanding from others the reassurance you should cultivate within yourself. Your attention returns to the one task that has always deserved it, the governance of your own character. Eventually, admiration loses its power to disturb you whether it is present or absent. Praise no longer intoxicates because your worth was never built upon it. Criticism no longer devastates because your conscience has become your first judge. Recognition no longer controls your motivation because virtue has become reason enough to act. This freedom cannot be granted by another person because it arises from disciplined self-examination practiced faithfully each day. Examine your motives before expecting admiration from other people because motives shape destiny long before actions become visible. Guard them with honesty, refine them through reason, correct them whenever vanity appears. Return each morning to the simple responsibility of acting well rather than appearing admirable. Return each evening to the quiet examination of whether your intentions remained worthy. In this steady practice you will discover a confidence that no applause can create and no neglect can destroy. It is the confidence of a soul that has stopped asking the world to confirm its value and has instead devoted itself to becoming worthy through virtue alone. Number 6. Practice steady patience when emotions demand careless and reckless action. Your life is not changed most deeply by the moments when everything is calm. It is changed by the moments when your emotions insist that you must act immediately. Those moments reveal the true condition of your character. When anger urges you to answer without reflection, when fear pressures you to retreat from duty, when frustration demands that you abandon self-control, the mind stands at a crossroads. One path belongs to impulse, the other belongs to reason. Every time you choose the second path, even when every feeling resists it, you strengthen the part of yourself that was meant to govern your life. Many people confuse emotion with authority. They assume that because a feeling is powerful, it must also be trustworthy. Yet strength of feeling does not prove correctness of judgment. A frightened mind often mistakes uncertainty for danger. An angry mind often mistakes disagreement for injustice. An impatient mind often mistakes delay for failure. Emotion speaks loudly, but volume has never been evidence of truth. If you allow intensity to become your guide, your life will be directed by whatever feeling arrives first, rather than by what is genuinely right. Look carefully at the decisions you regret most. They were rarely made after patient examination. They were often made during moments when you believed waiting was impossible. You spoke because silence felt unbearable. You acted because uncertainty felt uncomfortable. You abandoned restraint because emotion promised immediate relief. Yet relief gained through recklessness seldom lasts. Once the emotion fades, you are left to live with choices that reason never approved. This is why patience is not merely a pleasant quality. It is protection against becoming the servant of temporary impulses. The disciplined life begins by accepting one difficult truth. You are not required to obey every emotion that visits your mind. Feelings may arrive without invitation, but obedience remains a choice. There is a profound difference between experiencing emotion and surrendering to it. The first belongs to human nature, the second belongs to your judgment. Once you understand this distinction, you recover the freedom that impatience has quietly stolen from you. Begin every morning by preparing your mind for emotional disturbance before it appears. Do not assume the day will unfold according to your preferences. Someone may challenge your opinion. An unexpected obstacle may interrupt your plans. A disappointment may arrive without warning. Fatigue may weaken your attention. If you expect only comfort, every difficulty will seem like an injustice. If you prepare for difficulty, each challenge becomes an opportunity to practice self-command instead of surprise. When emotion begins to rise, resist the urge to ask how you feel first. Instead, ask what the situation requires. This single question redirects attention from appetite toward duty. Perhaps you feel insulted, yet fairness still requires respectful speech. Perhaps you feel discouraged, yet responsibility still requires effort. Perhaps you feel anxious, yet honesty still requires truthful action. Feelings change with circumstance. Duty remains constant. A life directed by duty becomes steadier because it no longer rises and falls with every passing emotional current. One of the greatest errors of the undisciplined mind is believing that immediate action always demonstrates strength. In reality, haste often reveals weakness. The inability to wait exposes dependence upon emotional comfort. The inability to pause reveals fear of uncertainty. The inability to reflect reveals distrust in reason itself. A patient mind is not inactive, it is deliberate. It refuses to allow urgency created by emotion to replace careful judgment. There will be moments when your anger insists that another person deserves an immediate response. Pause before giving your tongue permission to speak. Ask yourself whether your words are serving justice or simply seeking release. Anger often disguises revenge as honesty. It persuades you that harshness is courage and retaliation is strength. Yet once anger becomes the master of speech, reason quietly leaves the conversation. True strength appears when you preserve fairness even while correcting another person's mistake. Fear demands its own form of recklessness. It encourages avoidance instead of examination. It whispers that silence is safer than truth. It persuades you to abandon worthy responsibilities because failure appears possible. Yet fear cannot determine what is right. It merely reports discomfort. Do not allow discomfort to become your highest authority. There are many duties that remain worthy despite uncertainty. Courage does not require the absence of fear. It requires refusing to let fear decide your conduct. Impatience often grows from hidden expectations that reality should move according to your timetable. You expect immediate progress, you expect quick understanding from others, you expect rapid results from your efforts. When life refuses these demands, frustration begins shaping your thoughts. Examine these expectations honestly. Did reality ever promise that growth would be immediate? Did justice guarantee instant reward? Did wisdom assure that every worthy effort would produce visible success today? Once unrealistic expectations are removed, much unnecessary impatience disappears with them. Throughout the day, practice delaying small impulses before they become larger habits. When irritation urges immediate complaint, remain silent long enough to examine whether complaint serves any useful purpose. When excitement encourages promises beyond your ability to fulfill, wait until enthusiasm settles. When disappointment invites self-pity, return attention to the next responsibility instead. These seemingly ordinary moments educate the mind. Every delayed impulse strengthens your capacity for self-governance. The practice of separating what belongs to you from what does not becomes especially valuable during emotional disturbance. Another person's behavior may provoke irritation, but their behavior is not yours to command. Unexpected events may interrupt your plans, but events remain outside your authority. What belongs entirely to you is your judgment concerning those events. Protect that judgment carefully. Once you surrender it to emotion, you have abandoned the only territory that was truly entrusted to your care. Patience also transforms the way you understand other people. Instead of assuming harmful intentions immediately, you allow room for incomplete information. Instead of judging quickly, you observe carefully. Instead of reacting to appearances, you seek understanding. Many conflicts exist only because conclusions were formed before evidence deserved them. The patient mind grants reality enough time to reveal itself before issuing judgment. This habit protects both fairness and peace. Do not mistake patience for weakness or passivity. Patience is active discipline. It requires continuous attention over the movements of your own mind. It asks you to notice the first appearance of irritation before irritation grows into resentment. It asks you to recognize anxiety before anxiety becomes panic. It asks you to identify pride before pride begins defending itself. Such vigilance demands far greater strength than careless reaction ever could. Each evening, return to the moments when emotion challenged your discipline. Observe them without excuse. Which feeling gained unnecessary influence today? Which judgment gave that feeling its power? Where did impatience persuade you that waiting was impossible? Where did fear narrow your perspective? Where did frustration tempt you away from moderation? Honest review gradually uncovers recurring patterns. Once these patterns become visible, they lose much of their ability to govern you unnoticed. One valuable exercise is to intentionally slow yourself during ordinary activities. Walk without rushing when no urgency truly exists. Eat without distraction. Complete one task fully before beginning another. Listen until another person has finished speaking before preparing your reply. These practices may appear simple, yet they train the mind to resist constant urgency. A hurried life easily becomes a careless life because speed often replaces attention. Notice how often emotional disturbance begins with a hidden demand that reality should satisfy personal preference. You become upset because events refuse to match your desires, yet desires deserve examination before they receive obedience. Ask whether what you wanted was truly necessary for a good life. Was your peace dependent upon receiving immediate agreement? Was your dignity dependent upon avoiding inconvenience? Was your contentment dependent upon perfect circumstances? Once these assumptions are questioned, emotion loses much of its authority. Do not seek to eliminate emotion completely. Such a goal misunderstands the nature of disciplined living. The objective is not emotional emptiness but rational leadership. Emotion becomes harmful only when it occupies the place reserved for reason. Let your feelings inform you that something deserves attention. Do not permit them to determine what deserves action. Between feeling and action stands judgment. Protect that space carefully because it is there that freedom quietly resides. There will be occasions when patience appears to cost you something. You may lose the opportunity to deliver a clever response. You may refuse the satisfaction of immediate revenge. You may choose understanding where accusation would have gained support from others. In the short term, this restraint may feel costly. In the long term, it preserves something infinitely more valuable. It preserves the integrity of your own character. Nothing offered by impulse can equal that reward. As your patience grows, your relationships begin changing in subtle ways. People recognize that your responses are not controlled by passing moods. They discover that disagreement does not easily provoke hostility. They learn that your decisions emerge from thoughtful examination rather than emotional pressure. This steadiness creates trust because others encounter consistency instead of unpredictability. Yet remember that this trust is not the purpose of discipline. It is simply one of its natural consequences. If you fail and react carelessly, do not waste energy defending the mistake. Admit it plainly, correct it quickly, then investigate the judgment that allowed it to happen. Perhaps pride insisted upon being right. Perhaps fear exaggerated the consequences. Perhaps impatience demanded immediate certainty. Discover the hidden cause rather than merely regretting the visible result. Correction without examination leaves the roots untouched. As days become months, you will notice that patience no longer feels like constant restraint. It gradually becomes your ordinary manner of meeting the world. Situations that once provoked immediate reaction now receive thoughtful consideration. Delays that once disturbed you become opportunities to strengthen endurance. Uncertainty that once produced anxiety becomes another reminder to focus only upon what belongs to your own responsibility. The transformation occurs quietly because genuine character always grows through repeated choices rather than dramatic moments. Eventually you understand that no emotion, regardless of its intensity, possesses the right to command your conduct. Every feeling must first pass before the judgment of reason. Some emotions will reveal concerns worthy of attention. Others will expose habits requiring correction. Still others will fade once examined carefully. By refusing automatic obedience, you reclaim authority over your own life. You no longer drift wherever feeling carries you. You become the deliberate guardian of your own character. Practice steady patience whenever emotions demand careless and reckless action, because those moments determine far more than temporary comfort. They determine whether your life will be governed by fleeting impressions or enduring principles. Return each morning to the quiet preparation of your mind. Return throughout the day to the careful examination of every judgment. Return each evening to honest review without self-deception. Continue this discipline faithfully until patience is no longer something you occasionally practice, but the natural expression of a mind that has learnt to place reason above impulse and virtue above every passing emotion. Number 7. Choose virtue above approval and become impossible to ignore. There is a quiet decision you make every day without noticing it. You choose whether your next action will be directed by virtue or by the desire to be accepted. Most people never recognize that this choice exists. They assume they are simply responding to life as it unfolds. Yet beneath nearly every conversation, every ambition, every hesitation, and every compromise lies a hidden question. Will the first do what is right, or will I do what earns approval? Until that question is answered honestly, your life will always belong more to the opinions of others than to the rule of reason. The longing to be approved appears harmless because it often disguises itself as kindness, cooperation, or ambition. Yet examine it carefully. How many times have you remained silent when truth required speech because you feared another person's reaction? How many times have you agreed with something you knew was wrong simply to avoid discomfort? How many times have you changed your conduct, not because wisdom demanded it, but because you wished to remain acceptable in the eyes of others? Every such decision teaches the mind that acceptance is more valuable than integrity. Eventually, the habit becomes so familiar that you stop recognizing it as a choice at all. The disciplined soul refuses to place its highest good in something that can never be possessed securely. Approval belongs to other minds. Their opinions rise and fall with changing circumstances, incomplete understanding, and personal preference. A person who admires you today may criticize you tomorrow without your character having changed at all. If your peace depends upon remaining approved, then your peace has already left your own keeping. You have entrusted your inner stability to people who cannot consistently govern even their own judgments. A life directed by virtue begins with a different standard. Before asking whether others will approve, ask whether reason approves. Before wondering whether your decision will increase admiration, ask whether it strengthens justice, courage, moderation, or wisdom. These questions may not produce immediate comfort, but they produce something far greater. They produce a character that no longer bends whenever public opinion changes direction. Begin every morning by establishing the measure through which you will judge the coming day. Do not promise yourself admiration. Do not promise yourself success. Do not promise favorable circumstances. Promise only this: whatever happens today, I will not exchange what is right for what is popular. I will not abandon fairness to protect my image. I will not sacrifice honesty to preserve comfort. I will not seek applause at the expense of my own conscience. This preparation quietly strengthens the ruling part of the mind before temptation appears. Throughout the day, you will encounter moments that seem insignificant but reveal the true condition of your character. Someone may encourage you to join in criticism that serves no useful purpose. Another person may reward exaggeration more quickly than honesty. An opportunity may appear that offers advantage through compromise rather than integrity. These moments deserve careful attention because they shape the soul more than dramatic events ever could. Great corruption rarely begins with extraordinary wrongdoing. It begins with ordinary concessions repeated until conscience grows silent. Notice how frequently the desire for approval changes your speech before it changes your actions. You soften truths that should be spoken clearly. You praise what you do not truly respect. You remain silent while injustice passes unchallenged because you fear becoming unpopular. Slowly your words drift away from your convictions. Soon your actions follow. This separation between belief and conduct produces inward conflict because the mind cannot enjoy lasting peace while living divided against itself. One of the clearest signs that approval has become your master is the anxiety you experience before making ordinary decisions. You spend excessive time imagining how others will interpret your actions. You rehearse conversations that have not happened. You attempt to predict every possible reaction before taking a single step. Yet none of these imagined judgments belongs to your responsibility. They remain outside your authority regardless of how carefully you prepare for them. The only question that deserves your attention is whether your own conduct remains worthy. This is where the discipline of separating what belongs to you from what does not becomes essential. Your intentions belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your effort belongs to you. Your commitment to virtue belongs to you. Another person's praise does not. Their disappointment does not. Their misunderstanding does not. Their acceptance does not. Once you stop attempting to govern what was never yours, an enormous burden falls away. You become free to devote your energy to the only work that can truly improve your life. There will be times when virtue requires standing alone. Do not mistake solitude for failure. Many people gather companions by abandoning principles. Others preserve principles even when companionship becomes uncertain. The first group appears successful for a season, but gradually loses respect for themselves. The second group may appear unnoticed for a time, yet they gain something infinitely more valuable. They become trustworthy in their own eyes. A clear conscience provides steadiness that no crowd can replace. Examine carefully the moments when you feel compelled to explain yourself endlessly. Often the explanation is not offered to clarify truth but to rescue approval. You hope that if you choose enough words, another person's opinion will change. Sometimes explanation is necessary. Often it is not. Learn to recognize the difference. Speak honestly where duty requires. Accept misunderstanding where explanation no longer serves wisdom. Your character does not become stronger because everyone agrees with it. It becomes stronger because it remains faithful even when agreement never comes. Another daily practice is to complete worthy work without seeking recognition. Perform your responsibilities thoroughly even when no reward appears likely. Resist the temptation to announce every sacrifice or display every accomplishment. Allow some acts of goodness to remain known only to your own conscience. At first, this discipline may feel uncomfortable because the desire for acknowledgement has become habitual. Continue anyway. Over time, you will discover the quiet satisfaction that comes from doing what is right, simply because it is right. Be especially cautious when success begins arriving. Success often brings admiration, and admiration easily awakens vanity. You may begin measuring your worth by attention rather than by integrity. You may become more concerned with protecting reputation than correcting faults. This is a dangerous exchange because reputation belongs to the opinions of others while character belongs entirely to you. Protect the second far more carefully than the first. A damaged reputation may recover with time. A neglected character quietly weakens every future decision. Likewise, do not allow criticism to persuade you that virtue has failed. Sometimes, right action attracts opposition precisely because it refuses to follow popular desire. If your conscience remains clear after honest examination, do not abandon principle merely because approval has disappeared. Truth has never depended upon majority opinion. Justice has never required applause before deserving obedience. Let reason remain your judge even when public voices speak differently. Each evening, ask yourself not how many people admired you, but whether your conduct honored the principles you claim to value. Did you remain truthful when dishonesty offered easier acceptance? Did you preserve fairness when partiality promised advantage? Did you act courageously when silence would have protected your comfort? Did you exercise moderation when excess appeared attractive? These questions gradually reshape ambition itself. You stop asking how to appear admirable and begin asking how to become honorable. Beware of envying those who seem widely celebrated. You know their reputation, you do not know their character. Public recognition reveals little about the condition of the soul. Many people receive admiration while remaining inwardly dependent upon it. Their peace disappears whenever attention fades. Their confidence rises and falls according to praise. Such dependence resembles wealth built upon borrowed possessions. It appears impressive until the lender asks for everything back. Build instead upon what cannot be taken without your consent. Practice accepting unnoticed excellence. Some of your finest acts will receive no acknowledgement. Some of your greatest victories will occur entirely within your own mind. Resisting an impulse toward dishonesty leaves no visible monument. Refusing unnecessary resentment earns no public celebration. Remaining faithful during discouragement often passes unseen by everyone except yourself. Yet these hidden victories shape the person you become. They deserve greater respect than achievements celebrated merely because they are visible. You may wonder whether living this way means abandoning all concern for relationships. It does not. The disciplined life does not reject human connection. It rejects dependence upon external approval. Love others sincerely, serve them faithfully, listen respectfully, correct gently when necessary, receive correction humbly when deserved. Yet never require another person's admiration before allowing yourself to live according to reason. Healthy relationships grow from shared virtue, not from mutual dependence upon praise. Whenever disappointment arises because your efforts were overlooked, pause before accepting the disappointment as justified. Ask whether you were seeking virtue or recognition. If recognition was secretly the true objective, then the disappointment reveals an attachment requiring correction. If virtue remained your objective, then nothing essential has been lost. Right action has already accomplished its highest purpose by strengthening your own character. Everything beyond that belongs to fortune rather than duty. The desire to impress often persuades people to pursue unnecessary complexity. They seek extraordinary achievements while neglecting ordinary excellence. Yet the disciplined life is built differently. It asks you to fulfill today's responsibilities with complete integrity. Speak truthfully in today's conversation. Keep today's promise. Perform today's work carefully. Correct today's error honestly. Show patience during today's inconvenience. These simple acts appear small only to those who measure greatness through visibility rather than through moral substance. One valuable exercise is to spend time each day reflecting upon the temporary nature of public opinion. The voices that praise you today will one day become silent. The judgments that trouble you now will eventually disappear along with the people who formed them. Why surrender your peace to something so unstable? Let this reflection loosen your attachment to approval. Direct your attention instead toward the enduring work of refining your own judgment, because that work remains meaningful regardless of changing circumstances. There will also be moments when choosing virtue carries immediate cost. You may lose opportunities because you refuse dishonesty. You may lose popularity because you refuse compromise. You may lose comfort because justice demands sacrifice. Accept these costs without resentment. Nothing truly valuable is lost when integrity is preserved. Something immeasurably valuable is always lost when integrity is abandoned for temporary gain. As this discipline deepens, something remarkable begins happening. You stop entering every room wondering how others perceive you. Your attention shifts toward how faithfully you are living according to reason. You become less distracted by comparison because your standard no longer depends upon another person's success or approval. Decisions become clearer because they are measured by principles instead of popularity. Confidence grows quietly because it no longer waits for permission from the outside world. Eventually, people may notice this steadiness. They may trust your judgment because it cannot easily be purchased by approval. They may seek your counsel because your decisions are guided by principles rather than by convenience. They may respect your consistency because it remains unchanged through praise and criticism alike. Yet treat even this respect carefully. Receive it with gratitude, but never allow it to become your purpose. The moment admiration becomes the goal, virtue quietly becomes the servant instead of the master. Choose virtue above approval every single day, because only virtue remains entirely within your own authority. Approval will come and go according to circumstances you cannot govern. Reputation will rise and fall with opinions you cannot command. Popularity will appear and disappear with changing preferences. But a disciplined character remains available to you in every moment, through every choice you make. Continue returning to that responsibility morning after morning and evening after evening. Govern your own judgments. Purify your motives. Strengthen your conduct. In doing so, you become impossible to ignore, not because you sought attention, but because a life firmly rooted in reason possesses a quiet strength that no passing opinion can diminish. Number 8. Strengthen your self-control through consistent daily acts of discipline. Self-control is not something you suddenly discover during life's greatest trials. It is something you quietly construct through hundreds of ordinary choices that almost no one else will ever notice. Every time you surrender to an impulse simply because it is strong, you teach your mind that desire is your master. Every time you pause, examine the impulse, and choose according to reason instead, you strengthen the part of yourself that was meant to govern your life. The difference between these two habits may appear small today, but over the course of years it becomes the difference between living deliberately and living as a prisoner of every passing urge. Many people believe discipline begins only when life becomes difficult. They wait for a crisis before deciding to become stronger. They promise themselves that tomorrow they will finally take command of their thoughts, their speech, and their actions. Yet tomorrow arrives carrying the same undisciplined habits that shaped yesterday. Character is never transformed by intention alone. It is transformed by repeated action. The person who cannot govern himself during ordinary moments should not expect sudden mastery when extraordinary hardship appears. Look honestly at your own day. How many decisions are truly chosen, and how many simply happen because habit has replaced judgment? You wake and immediately allow distraction to claim your attention. You react to inconvenience before asking whether your reaction deserves obedience. You postpone responsibilities because comfort seems more attractive than duty. You speak without first examining whether your words are necessary. None of these actions occur because you consciously decided they were right. They occur because repetition has quietly become your ruler. This is why the examined life begins with attention. You cannot govern what you refuse to observe. Before changing your habits, you must first become aware of them. Do not condemn yourself when you discover weakness. Condemnation does not strengthen character. Honest recognition does. The mind that sees its own faults clearly has already taken the first step toward freedom because hidden weaknesses possess the greatest power. Each morning before beginning the day's work, sit quietly for a few moments and establish one simple intention. Tell yourself that today you will not obey every desire simply because it appears. You will examine each impulse before accepting it. You will ask whether it leads toward virtue or away from it. This brief preparation changes the direction of the day because it reminds you that your first responsibility is not controlling events but governing yourself. The greatest obstacle to self-control is the belief that pleasure deserves immediate satisfaction and discomfort deserves immediate escape. This belief quietly shapes countless decisions. You avoid difficult conversations because they create temporary unease. You delay necessary work because effort demands patience. You seek constant entertainment because silence invites self-examination, yet every attempt to escape discomfort weakens your capacity to endure it. The mind gradually becomes dependent upon convenience and begins treating every inconvenience as an injustice. The disciplined person understands something different. Discomfort is not always an enemy. Often it is a teacher. It reveals where attachment remains too strong. It exposes desires that have been accepted without examination. It uncovers fears that quietly govern decisions from beneath awareness. Instead of fleeing every uncomfortable experience, remain present long enough to learn what it reveals about your character. Practice denying yourself small, unnecessary comforts from time to time. Choose simplicity when excess is available. Delay immediate gratification when patience serves no harm. Complete a responsibility before rewarding yourself with leisure. These exercises are not punishments, they are training. They remind your mind that happiness does not depend upon constant satisfaction of desire. A person who can willingly accept temporary discomfort becomes far less vulnerable when life imposes hardship without permission. Throughout the day, notice how often your emotions attempt to disguise themselves as reasonable conclusions. Fatigue tells you that discipline can wait until tomorrow. Frustration tells you that harsh words are justified. Excitement tells you that careful thought is unnecessary. Fear tells you that avoidance is wisdom. Examine these messages carefully. Emotions may describe your present condition, but they do not automatically deserve authority over your conduct. Let reason examine every suggestion before action follows. One powerful daily practice is to pause before every meaningful decision and ask a single question. Does this action strengthen my character or merely satisfy my impulse? The answer may not always be pleasant, but it will often be clear. Speaking impatiently may satisfy irritation while weakening moderation. Avoiding responsibility may satisfy comfort while weakening courage. Seeking unnecessary praise may satisfy vanity while weakening wisdom. Once you recognize this pattern, self-control becomes less mysterious. It becomes the repeated decision to strengthen character instead of serving appetite. Do not imagine that discipline requires dramatic achievements. The soul is shaped more often by ordinary moments than by extraordinary ones, returning a lost item when no one would discover otherwise, remaining honest when dishonesty appears profitable, listening carefully when interruption feels easier, finishing work thoroughly even when no reward is expected, speaking respectfully while another person behaves carelessly. These moments quietly accumulate until virtue becomes familiar rather than exceptional. Another essential practice is learning to separate desire from necessity. Much of what disturbs you is not required for a good life. You believe you need constant recognition, perfect circumstances, immediate progress, or endless comfort. Examine these assumptions honestly. Ask whether your character truly depends upon possessing these things. You will often discover that what seemed necessary was only strongly desired. Once desire is recognized for what it is, it loses much of its power to command you. Guard your attention carefully because self-control begins where attention remains awake. A distracted mind rarely notices the first appearance of temptation. It realizes what has happened only after habit has already taken command. The attentive mind recognizes the earliest movement toward resentment, laziness, pride, or fear. It meets these impulses while they are still small enough to examine calmly. Prevention is always easier than correction. Remember that your greatest contest is never against another person. It is against the careless judgments that repeatedly arise within your own mind. Another person's success cannot weaken your character unless envy receives your consent. Another person's insult cannot destroy your peace unless you choose to surrender your judgment to anger. Another person's opinion cannot diminish your worth unless you allow external voices to become the measure of your value. Every true victory begins within the boundaries of your own reason. There will be days when discipline feels effortless, and days when every small decision seems demanding. Do not mistake temporary difficulty for failure. Character is strengthened precisely when virtue requires effort. Anyone can remain calm when nothing provokes him. Anyone can remain patient when nothing delays him. Anyone can remain honest when dishonesty offers no advantage. The true measure of self-control appears when virtue asks something difficult from you and you willingly obey. Each evening, perform a careful examination of your conduct. Review the day without harshness and without excuses. Ask yourself where reason governed successfully and where impulse quietly took control. Which desires received unnecessary obedience? Which moments demonstrated genuine restraint? Which situations deserve greater preparation tomorrow? Treat this review as instruction rather than punishment. Every honest answer becomes material for future improvement. You will notice that many failures of discipline begin long before visible action occurs. They begin with an unchecked thought. A complaint is accepted without examination. A resentment is repeated until it feels justified. A fantasy of comfort grows stronger through constant attention. Guard the entrance to your mind with greater care than the outward expression of your habits. Correct judgments early, and many harmful actions will never need correction. Practice fulfilling every duty completely, even when your feelings resist it. Your responsibilities do not disappear because enthusiasm has faded. The value of honorable work does not depend upon your mood. A disciplined life requires learning that feelings change while obligations remain. By repeatedly acting according to principle instead of emotion, you teach your mind that reason occupies the highest place. Be careful not to seek perfection in a single day. The desire for immediate transformation often leads to discouragement when ordinary human weakness appears. Improvement belongs to those who return consistently after every mistake. If you fail in the morning, begin again before noon. If you fail in the afternoon, begin again before evening. Never allow one careless decision to become permission for another. Every moment offers a fresh opportunity to restore reason to its proper place. There is also wisdom in practicing restraint even when no one is watching. Refuse the temptation to believe that private actions carry less importance than public ones. The soul does not distinguish between hidden habits and visible habits. Every action either strengthens or weakens character, regardless of whether another person witnesses it. Live with the same integrity and solitude that you hope to display before others. This quiet consistency creates a stability that admiration alone can never produce. Do not envy those who appear to live without restraint while enjoying temporary success. You see only the visible reward, not the invisible cost. Every surrendered impulse gradually weakens the ability to govern future impulses. Every careless indulgence teaches the mind to demand greater indulgence tomorrow. What appears to be freedom often becomes dependence. True freedom belongs to the person who can refuse himself when reason requires it. As discipline grows, you will discover an unexpected peace. Decisions become simpler because they are no longer negotiated with every passing desire. Your mind becomes quieter because it is no longer pulled in opposite directions by conflicting appetites. Confidence becomes steadier because it rests upon choices you have actually governed rather than circumstances you merely hoped would remain favorable. This peace is not created by comfort, it is created by order within the soul. There will always be desires that ask for immediate satisfaction. There will always be emotions that promise relief through careless action. There will always be opportunities to exchange long-term character for short-term pleasure. Meet each of these moments with calm examination rather than automatic obedience. Ask what belongs to your control. Ask what reason requires. Ask what strengthens virtue. Then act according to those answers even when they oppose your immediate preference. Strengthen your self-control through consistent daily acts of discipline, because greatness of character is never formed in a single dramatic event. It is formed every morning when you prepare your mind before the world demands your attention. It is formed throughout the day when you choose principle over impulse. It is formed every evening when you examine your conduct without deception and prepare to improve again tomorrow. Continue this work patiently, continue it faithfully, continue it whether others notice or not. In time, your mind will no longer be governed by changing desires, but by the steady authority of reason, and that is the freedom that no external circumstance can ever take away. Number 9. Release every judgment that steals your inner peace today. Your peace is rarely taken from you by the world itself. More often it is surrendered through the judgments you attach to what happens. An event appears before your eyes, simple and complete in its own nature. Then your mind begins adding meanings that were never contained within the event itself. You call it unfair, unbearable, humiliating, disastrous, or permanent. Before long, you are no longer responding to reality. You are responding to the story your own judgment has created. If you wish to recover lasting peace, begin not by changing the world, but by examining the judgments through which you have been interpreting it. Most people never notice this invisible habit. They believe their suffering arrives directly from circumstances. They blame another person's words, unexpected hardship, delayed success, lost opportunities, or uncertain outcomes. Yet pause for a moment and observe carefully. Two people can experience the same event and leave with completely different states of mind. One becomes bitter while the other remains steady. One loses hope while the other continues acting with purpose. The difference does not lie within the event. It lies within the judgment each person has chosen to accept. This truth is difficult because it removes the comfort of blaming the world. It places responsibility where many people least desire to find it. It places responsibility within the governance of your own mind. This is not a burden meant to discourage you. It is the beginning of freedom. If your suffering were entirely produced by circumstances, then your peace would remain permanently dependent upon forces outside your control. But if your judgments shape much of your distress, then you possess the ability to begin changing your experience today through disciplined examination. From the moment you wake each morning, impressions begin presenting themselves. A message arrives that you did not expect. A plan changes without your consent. Someone fails to meet your expectations. Your body feels tired. Your progress appears slower than you hoped. None of these impressions arrive carrying instructions about how you must feel. They merely appear. The disturbance begins only when your judgment immediately declares that these events should never have happened, or that they have destroyed your opportunity for a good day. Train yourself to interrupt this process before it becomes automatic. Whenever something unpleasant occurs, resist the urge to assign meaning immediately. Instead, ask yourself a quieter and more disciplined question. What has actually happened? Describe only the facts without adding emotional conclusions. You may discover that reality is often far simpler than the story your mind has constructed. The event may still require action, but it no longer deserves unnecessary suffering created through exaggerated interpretation. Many judgments steal peace because they quietly claim authority over things that never belonged to you. You judge yourself a failure because another person rejected your effort. You judge your life incomplete because circumstances changed without permission. You judge tomorrow hopeless because today contained difficulty. Each of these conclusions reaches beyond what reason can honestly know. You are attempting to pronounce final judgment upon matters that remain uncertain or outside your authority. Such thinking cannot produce peace because it continually demands certainty where certainty cannot exist. Begin every morning by reminding yourself of the boundary between what belongs to you and what does not. Your judgments belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your intentions belong to you. Your willingness to act with integrity belongs to you. The weather does not. Another person's opinion does not. The timing of success does not. The behavior of strangers does not. Every time you confuse these two categories, anxiety quietly enters because you have accepted responsibility for something that was never yours to govern. There is another judgment that often remains hidden beneath daily frustration. It is the belief that life owes you comfort. Once this belief settles into the mind, every inconvenience begins appearing as an injustice. Delays become personal insults. Obstacles become evidence that something has gone wrong. Difficult people become reasons to abandon patience. Yet no part of existence ever promised freedom from hardship. Expecting constant ease only prepares the mind for constant disappointment. Accepting difficulty as a natural part of life prepares the mind for steady endurance. Examine also the judgments you hold about yourself. Many people carry old conclusions that continue shaping every present decision. They tell themselves they are incapable because they once failed. They believe they cannot change because they have repeated the same mistake before. They assume they are permanently defined by yesterday's weakness. These judgments deserve careful scrutiny. A past action is a fact. A permanent identity built from that action is a judgment. Do not confuse the two. Correct your mistakes honestly, but refuse to imprison yourself within conclusions that reason cannot support. Whenever another person behaves poorly toward you, pause before allowing resentment to become your teacher. Their conduct belongs to them. Your judgment concerning their conduct belongs to you. You cannot prevent another person's ignorance, impatience, or unfairness. You can prevent yourself from becoming equally governed by those same qualities. If another person's behavior immediately destroys your peace, then you have granted them authority over something that should have remained under your own care. This does not mean pretending injustice is acceptable. It means refusing to multiply one difficulty by adding another. An unkind action may require a firm response. Dishonesty may require correction. Harm may require protection. Yet none of these responsibilities require hatred. None require surrendering your own reason. Meet wrongdoing with justice rather than vengeance. Meet ignorance with clarity rather than bitterness. Preserve your own character while addressing the situation before you. One of the most destructive judgments is the belief that your happiness depends upon events unfolding according to your preference. Observe how often disappointment grows from this hidden expectation. You believe success must arrive by a certain time. You believe relationships must always remain harmonious. You believe people should always understand your intentions. When reality refuses these demands, frustration follows naturally because the mind has mistaken preference for necessity. Learn to distinguish between what you would like and what is required for a good life. Much that you desire may be pleasant, but very little of it is essential to living with virtue. Throughout the day, practice examining your first impression before allowing it to become your settled belief. When inconvenience appears, ask whether it truly threatens your character or merely your comfort. When criticism arrives, ask whether it reveals a genuine fault or merely another person's perspective. When praise comes, ask whether it reflects virtue or simply popularity. This habit of careful examination gradually weakens the power of impulsive judgment and strengthens the authority of reason. Silence can become one of your greatest teachers during this practice. Not every impression deserves an immediate response. Not every emotion deserves immediate expression. Allow space between what happens and what you conclude about it. Within that space, reason has an opportunity to speak before habit takes command. Many unnecessary conflicts disappear simply because the mind refused to issue a verdict too quickly. Each evening, conduct a careful review of the judgments that shaped your day. Ask yourself where unnecessary suffering began. Did it begin with reality itself, or with the interpretation you attached to reality? Which conclusions proved exaggerated? Which expectations created disappointment? Which assumptions remained unsupported by evidence? Do not conduct this examination to accuse yourself. Conduct it to educate yourself. Every mistaken judgment recognized today becomes less likely to govern tomorrow. There will be moments when painful circumstances genuinely deserve grief. The disciplined life does not demand emotional emptiness. Loss remains painful. Separation remains difficult. Illness remains serious. Yet even within sorrow, judgment continues playing an important role. You may grieve without concluding that life has become meaningless. You may experience hardship without deciding that hope has ended. You may acknowledge pain without surrendering your commitment to virtue. This distinction preserves dignity even during suffering. Beware of borrowing judgments from the crowd without examining them yourself. Society often teaches that wealth determines worth, popularity measures success, comfort defines happiness, and recognition proves value. Accept none of these conclusions without careful reflection. Many widely accepted opinions quietly lead people away from self-command and toward dependence upon external conditions. Let reason become your measure rather than public fashion. Practice gratitude as another way of correcting false judgments. The mind that continually notices what is missing easily forgets what remains present. You still possess opportunities to choose honesty, patience, courage, moderation, and wisdom, regardless of changing circumstances. No external event can prevent you from practicing these qualities unless you first judge that it can. Gratitude restores attention to what remains within your authority instead of what has temporarily passed beyond it. You will gradually notice that inner peace is not created by arranging perfect circumstances. It is created by arranging your judgments according to reality. The world will continue changing. People will continue disappointing you. Plans will continue requiring adjustment. Fortune will continue acting beyond your command. Yet your capacity to examine impressions before accepting them remains available every single day. That capacity becomes the quiet guardian of your peace. There will still be moments when an old judgment returns with familiar strength. Do not become discouraged. Habits formed over many years seldom disappear after one examination. Meet each recurring judgment with patient correction. Refuse to grow angry at yourself simply because another opportunity for practice has appeared. Every repetition allows reason to become stronger and habit to become weaker. Over time, you will discover that peace no longer depends upon avoiding difficulty. It depends upon meeting difficulty without surrendering your judgment. Delays become opportunities for patience. Criticism becomes an opportunity for honest examination. Uncertainty becomes an opportunity to strengthen trust in reason rather than prediction. Hardship becomes an opportunity to refine endurance. Life itself does not become easier, but your relationship with it becomes wiser. Eventually, the greatest change will not be visible to others. It will occur quietly within your own mind. You will notice that situations which once disturbed you no longer possess the same power. Not because the world has improved, but because your judgments have become more disciplined. You stop arguing with reality. You stop demanding certainty from an uncertain future. You stop requiring other people to guarantee your peace. Your attention returns again and again to the one place where genuine freedom has always been waiting, the governance of your own reason. Release every judgment that steals your inner peace today, because no unnecessary conclusion deserves authority over your life. Let every impression be examined before it is accepted. Let every expectation be tested before it becomes a demand. Let every emotional reaction pass before reason decides what is true. Rise each morning, prepared to govern your own mind rather than the changing world. End each evening by correcting the judgments that weakened your peace. Continue this discipline faithfully until your tranquility rests not upon favorable circumstances, but upon the steady practice of seeing reality clearly and choosing virtue above every false conclusion. Number 10. Live each day with reason until presence speaks without words. You live each day inside a constant stream of impressions. Some arrive as events, some arrive as thoughts, some arrive as emotions that seem to appear without permission. Most people move through these impressions without questioning them. They react before they examine. They judge before they understand. They speak before they reflect. In doing so, they allow the surface of the mind to govern the depth of their character. Yet there is another way to live, one that does not begin with reaction but with reason, and does not end with chaos but with quiet clarity. To live with reason is not to suppress life. It is to interpret life correctly before responding to it. Every situation that enters your awareness is neutral until judgment assigns meaning. The mistake most people repeat daily is believing that meaning is already contained in the event itself. They say something is good or bad, as if reality itself issued that conclusion. But reality presents only facts. Judgment supplies interpretation. When judgment is unexamined, it becomes the origin of unnecessary suffering. When judgment is disciplined, it becomes the beginning of wisdom. Look carefully at your ordinary day. Notice how quickly your mind forms conclusions without evidence. A delay becomes disrespect. A silence becomes rejection. A challenge becomes failure. A disagreement becomes hostility. None of these meanings are present in the raw experience itself. They are added by a mind that has not yet learned to pause. When you accept these interpretations without question, you are no longer responding to life. You are responding to assumptions that have never been tested. Begin each morning with a simple act of mental preparation. Remind yourself that you will encounter impressions today that are not yet truths. They are only appearances. Your task is not to obey them instantly, but to examine them carefully. Ask what belongs to fact and what belongs to interpretation. Ask what is within your control and what lies outside it. Ask whether your response is guided by reason or by impulse. This preparation transforms the entire structure of the day because it places reason at the entrance of every decision. The mind that is not trained in this way becomes easily governed by habit. Habit tells you how to react before you have the chance to choose. It produces familiar patterns of anger, avoidance, complaint, desire, and fear. Over time, these patterns become so automatic that they feel like identity. Yet they are not identity. They are repetition without reflection. When you interrupt them with awareness, you begin reclaiming the space where choice becomes possible again. To live with reason requires learning the discipline of pause. Between impression and response, there is a small space that most people ignore. In that space lies your freedom. If you rush through it, you lose that freedom without noticing. If you remain within it, even briefly, you recover the ability to choose your response rather than inherit it from habit. In that pause, emotion may still be present, but it no longer commands authority. It becomes something observed rather than something obeyed. Many disturbances in life arise not from events themselves, but from refusing to remain in that space. You are insulted, and before examining the truth of the situation, you respond with anger. You are delayed, and before considering necessity, you respond with frustration. You are uncertain, and before seeking clarity, you respond with anxiety. Each reaction bypasses reason and strengthens impulse. Over time, this creates a life that feels reactive rather than deliberate. Reason does not eliminate emotion. It places emotion under examination. It asks whether the emotion is aligned with reality or shaped by distortion. It asks whether the response serves virtue or serves impulse. It asks whether action is necessary or merely habitual. When reason governs in this way, emotions lose their ability to mislead. They still arise, but they no longer decide your conduct. As you practice this discipline, you will begin to notice something subtle but profound. The urgency of your inner world begins to soften. Events that once demanded immediate reaction begin to feel less commanding. Thoughts that once felt absolute begin to feel provisional. Emotional spikes begin to fade more quickly because they are no longer reinforced by automatic belief. This is not detachment from life, it is clarity within life. Throughout the day, practice returning repeatedly to the question of what is within your control. You do not control how others interpret your actions. You do not control the timing of external events. You do not control how circumstances unfold beyond your influence. What you do control is your judgment, your intention, your choice of action, and your willingness to remain aligned with reason. Every moment that you forget this distinction becomes a moment of unnecessary inner conflict. When something disturbs you, begin by separating the event from the judgment you have added to it. The event itself is simple. The judgment is where suffering begins. If you lose something, the fact is that it is gone. The judgment that it ruins your life or defines your worth is added by the mind. If someone disagrees with you, the fact is disagreement. The judgment that you are diminished by it is optional. By returning to this separation again and again, you weaken the habit of overinterpretation that disturbs peace. Living with reason also means observing your speech before it leaves your mouth. Many words are spoken not because they are necessary, but because they are emotionally charged. You repeat opinions before examining them. You defend positions before understanding them fully. You speak to fill silence rather than to express truth. When speech is not guided by reason, it becomes another form of reaction. When speech is guided by reason, it becomes an extension of character. In relationships, this discipline becomes especially important. You will be tempted to interpret every action through personal emotion. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A different opinion becomes disrespect. A moment of distance becomes abandonment. Yet these interpretations often reveal more about your internal state than about reality. Practice asking instead of assuming. Practice observing instead of concluding. Practice allowing time for clarity before assigning meaning. Many conflicts dissolve when premature judgment is replaced with patient understanding. Each evening, examine the judgments that shaped your day. Identify where reason was present and where it was absent. Notice which moments you responded too quickly. Notice where assumptions replaced inquiry. Notice where emotion bypassed reflection. This review is not meant to create guilt. It is meant to create awareness. Awareness is the beginning of correction. Without awareness, repetition continues unnoticed. With awareness, repetition becomes choice. There will be moments when reason feels distant, especially during emotional intensity. In those moments, do not abandon discipline. Slow down your responses. Reduce unnecessary speech. Focus on what is directly observable rather than what is imagined. Return to basic facts. What is actually happening right now without interpretation? Often this simple return to facts is enough to dissolve the intensity of distortion and restore clarity. Over time, consistent practice of reasoned living begins to change not only how you respond, but how you perceive. You begin noticing impressions before they harden into judgments. You begin sensing emotional shifts before they escalate into reactions. You begin recognizing assumptions before they become beliefs. This heightened awareness is not tension, it is precision. It is the mind becoming capable of seeing itself clearly while still engaged in life. As this clarity deepens, something quieter begins to emerge. Your presence becomes less dependent on explanation. You no longer need to justify yourself constantly because your actions already reflect alignment with reason. You no longer need to defend every misunderstanding because your conduct speaks with consistency. You no longer need to seek validation because your internal order replaces external approval. Presence begins to express itself without effort because it is no longer fragmented by contradiction. This is what it means for presence to speak without words. It is not performance, it is coherence. It is the natural expression of a mind that no longer argues with itself. Thought, action, and intention begin to align. There is less inner noise because there is less internal conflict. The person you appear to be becomes the same as the person you are when no one is watching. This alignment creates a quiet strength that does not need announcement. Do not imagine this state arrives all at once. It is constructed through countless small decisions to return to reason instead of impulse. Each time you pause before reacting, you strengthen it. Each time you examine a judgment before accepting it, you strengthen it. Each time you separate what is within your control from what is not, you strengthen it. These repetitions build a life where clarity becomes more natural than confusion. You will still face difficulties. You will still experience uncertainty. You will still encounter people who misunderstand you and events that challenge your expectations. None of these conditions disappear. What changes is your relationship to them. They no longer define your inner state. They become material for practice rather than sources of disturbance. Reason becomes the stable ground beneath changing circumstances. Live each day with reason until presence speaks without words, because a life governed by reason no longer requires constant explanation. It is expressed in how you respond, how you endure, how you choose, and how you remain steady regardless of circumstance. Return to this discipline every morning before impressions accumulate. Return to it throughout the day whenever reaction tempts you to abandon reflection. Return to it each night when examining the quality of your judgments. In doing so, you gradually build a life where clarity replaces confusion, choice replaces reaction, and inner order becomes the silent language through which your entire existence is understood.